So welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Lauren Schroeder, who is going to talk to all of you about UBC admissions. We know we've had so many questions about this already, so I'm not gonna waste any time. I'm gonna pass it right back over to Lauren to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Marie. So hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Schroeder. My pronouns are she, her. And this is a great slide to just take a quick photo of in case you do want to reach out to me after today. I'll make sure to share my email again before we wrap up. But just in case anyone does have to take off, you can reach me at that recruitment.ok@ubc.ca email address. And I'm a student recruiter advisor here at UBC. So my job is really focused on helping students who are located in Canada navigate the process of applying to UBC or learning more about UBC and what we have to offer here. So you can definitely reach out to me if you do have any other questions after today. But I'm also part of a team of recruiters. So with that recruitment.ok@ubc.ca, you might connect with me, you might connect with my colleagues, but you're in great hands and we're all here to help you navigate this process and get the answers that you need to your questions as you go throughout trying to figure out if UBC is a good fit for you. So I will kick off today by acknowledging that UBC's Okanagan campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. And the UBC Vancouver campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam Nation. So the lands that both of the UBC campuses are situated on have always been a place of learning for First Nations peoples, who for millennia have passed along their culture, history, language, and traditions from one generation to the next on these lands. And it's important to pause on that word unceded. This is to acknowledge that our campuses were built upon this land without compensation or consent. And when we're opening our events with a land acknowledgement, we're doing so as a way of showing our intentions to carry ourselves during this event, but also in our work in a positive way that is mindful for the need for truth-telling and reconciliation. And I encourage each and every one of you who are attending this event today to take the time to research the lands that you're on and also to reflect on your place on those lands as well. All right, so I hear that this is a coveted session with lots of information that you want to know about the admissions process. So I'll do my best to wrap this up in the time that we have and still make sure that we've got lots of time for questions. So you're here tonight, you're obviously curious about UBC. You may have attended some of the other sessions throughout this fantastic virtual event. So I'll give a little bit of a summary of a couple of things, but if you want to do a deep dive into a lot of the different things that engineering is offering across our two campuses, there are the booths available at the expo. There are so many different sessions that have been happening and will be happening where you can do a bit more of a deep dive in those areas. But at UBC, regardless of which campus you choose, we are one UBC. So whether you choose the Vancouver campus or the Okanagan campus, you're going to graduate with a Bachelor of Applied Science from UBC. Both campuses offer unique experiences and are distinctly different from one another in terms of the size of the community, the cities that they're located in. So they're two unique experiences, hopefully catering to students in different ways and providing different learning environments and experiences and daily sort of living and learning life on each campus. That's hopefully a great option at both campuses for you to consider. But certainly the size of the community and the size of the city that you want to be a part of. If you love the sunshine, the Okanagan campus gets over 300 days of sunshine. So, thinking about things with your life on campus, but also as the students were just talking about in the panel before, you also want to think about what you want in your life outside of campus as well, right? So it's important to get to know our two communities and figure out which one or potentially both could be a good fit for you. And just before we jump into some of the admissions information, we get a lot of questions, understandably, about some of the terminology that we use here in the recruitment office and the admissions office. And it can get a little bit confusing because what it means at UBC may mean something different than at another institution, or you might be the first person in your family to attend post-secondary education, and all of these terms might be new for you. Or even if you have family members who perhaps attended university outside of Canada, some of these terms might be completely different in the institutions that they went to. So it's a lot of information, but do know that as you're navigating this process, again, you can reach out to myself and my colleagues in the recruitment office, and we can help to guide you along the way. So I'm just going to focus on two key terms that do come up. I was even answering quite a few emails today on this particular topic. just clarifying these terms for some students, even some counselors, just making sure we're all on the same page, because knowing what these two things mean is actually really important for understanding the whole admissions process at UBC. So we're going to start off with the degree first, and I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but I'm going to put my mouse over here anyway on the degree side. So what we mean by degree is the undergraduate degree, the bachelor's degree. So if you are applying to UBC for engineering, the degree that you're looking at is going to be the Bachelor of Applied Science. So the Bachelor of, that's the end qualification that you're ending up with at the end of your time with UBC, what you're graduating with. So for this example that I've picked here, I'm using the Bachelor of Applied Science at the Okanagan campus as the sort of overall degree we're looking at for the sample. And then as you can see over here, the specialization that I'm looking at is computer engineering. So the degree is made up of 120 credits. And a great way of thinking about this that I've heard from one of the students who's worked with us in the past is thinking about this like a puzzle. So your puzzle making up your degree is made of 120 pieces for this degree. You got a 120 piece puzzle. You're putting it all together over the course of 4 years. And within that 120 piece puzzle, you have for this example, you have 108 credits. 108 of those 120 pieces is made up of your specialization. So for this, that would be computer engineering. Now this number is going to look different depending on exactly what specialization, or if you're considering other degrees at UBC, the number is going to look different depending on the other majors you might be looking at. But for here today, just to clarify these terms, we're looking at 108 credits of the 120 piece credit puzzle made up of the specialization. So when you're applying to UBC, you are applying to the degree and the campus. So you're applying to the Bachelor of Applied Science, say at the Okanagan campus as your first choice, and then maybe the Bachelor of Applied Science at Vancouver as your second choice. And I'll talk a little bit more about the two choices later on, but you are applying to the degree and the campus. You are not applying to a specialization at the time that you apply to UBC for admission. That process comes at the end of your first year at UBC. So the degree and the campus is what you want to focus on for right now. Of course, it's important to know what specializations are available at UBC to make sure that areas of interest are actually offered in alignment with what you're hoping to choose from. But you don't have to know for sure what specialization you want within engineering. And there's also no way to apply for it right now. So if you're super keen, just know that that part of the process comes later at the end of the first year. At the Okanagan campus, it's a declaration process. I'll speak about that a little bit more in a couple slides time. So you have a bit of certainty that you're going to be able to pick the specialization that you want. Whereas at the Vancouver campus, that process is a competitive process at the end of the first year. So I'll touch on those topics a little bit more in the coming slides, but the degree and the campus is what you're applying to on your application for admission to UBC, not the specialization. That comes later. And in terms of ways that you can join us at UBC, you can, of course, consider joining us what we call direct entry, which is coming to us straight from high school, but that's not the only way to join UBC. There is an ability for you to apply to transfer to UBC and basically start your studies at another institution and then join UBC later in your studies and graduate from UBC. So it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. And UBC for engineering specifically, and I know there's an event coming up in November if anyone wants to spend more time going into a lot of detail on these transfer options, but on the website for each of the two campuses, there's a list of different institutions that we are partnered with. So the Faculty of Applied Science, Bachelor of Applied Science, has some great partnerships with different institutions, great bridging programs that are essentially designed for you to start perhaps at another BC institution. And then they're designed to enable you to start there and then finish at UBC and graduate with a Bachelor of Applied Science from UBC. Now, the partnerships and agreements vary depending on the campus, as well as some of the finer terms and conditions of what you need to do in order to maintain that sort of transfer pathway to graduate at UBC. But that is a fantastic section of the website to be checking out, to be learning more about, so that you're maximizing your options for being able to, even if maybe perhaps you're not successful with your application with UBC's engineering programs now, that you have a backup plan or an alternative plan, or perhaps your first choice plan to start elsewhere and then join us and graduate from UBC in the future. So definitely check out that transfer section of each of the campus's websites for those fantastic programs that we have. Now you're here tonight, so you've probably done a little bit of exploring with what different options in terms of specializations the engineering programs at our 2 campuses offer, but I am just going to leave this up on the screen. Sometimes it's nice to have a visual in one place to have everything in one slide. You're welcome to take a picture of this if you want to, but you can see that at the Okanagan campus, there are 5 specializations offered, and at the Vancouver campus, there are 14. And within that, the same 5 that are offered at the Okanagan are also offered at Vancouver. Now, you heard me mention a little bit a few minutes ago when we were talking about degree and specialization that the process for the specializations is different at the 2 campuses. So at the Okanagan, it is a declarative process. So you go through the competitive part of getting into the degree itself, right? You gain admission. Once you're admitted to UBC, that piece is over. You just got to go through your first year courses and, of course, take all the first year courses, pass your first year courses. There are some terms and conditions you need to adhere to. But at the end of the year, you're going to have some certainty knowing that you can declare the specialization that you want. So the Okanagan campus does offer that unique assurance that you're able to do that. The Vancouver campus is obviously offering a few more options, but it is a competitive process at the end of your first year. So just something to think about, that there are unique attributes to that experience that are campus specific, and have a think about which one might be best suited to you and your learning style. If you like the competitive nature of that, Vancouver might be a great fit. But if you want that certainty, Okanagan might be a great fit. And you can also apply to both campuses, and we'll talk about that later too. So in terms of some key deadlines, now these deadlines, you can take a photo of this slide, but this is also available on our website at any time, should you want a reference to go back to. But a key deadline to focus on is December 1st. So whether you're in grade 10 or 11 right now, or you're in grade 12, generally these deadlines are exactly the same year to year. So you can still kind of mentally map this out in your calendar for next year. Of course, double check with us just to be sure. But in the 4+ years that I've been here, these dates have been exactly the same each year. So December 1st is the deadline to apply for admission for the first round of admission. And it's also tied into your eligibility. If you want to be considered for a scholarship at UBC, you need to apply for admission by the 1st of December. So we do have different financial scholarship options. So we have merit-based scholarships, which fall under a category of what we call the Presidential Scholars Awards. Now, there's no additional application for those awards. You just tick a box on the application itself. So within the online application towards the end is a box that you're going to tick that says something like, yes, I want to be considered for scholarships. So if that's true, tick the box, submit it before the 1st of December, and you're good to go. You'll automatically be considered for those merit-based scholarships. We also have another category of scholarships called the Centennial Scholars Entrance Awards. Now, these are financial need-based scholarships. And because financial need looks different for each student, we do have an additional application that is required for those scholarships, and that is also due by the 1st of December. So it's just good to know that you not only need to submit the admissions application by the 1st, but you also need to submit that second application for the financial need-based scholarships, the Centennial Scholars Entrance Award sort of umbrella, if you're interested in being considered for those as well. And then you can see that the 15th of January is the final deadline to apply. That is the regular round offer of admission deadline. The main reason to apply early is really for scholarship consideration. This is by the 1st, I'm jumping back to the first year, is really for scholarship consideration, as well as perhaps if you're hoping to possibly find out a little bit earlier from us, should you be successful with a first round offer of admission. But the 15th of January is the final deadline that you can apply by, as you can see here. And then in terms of like funding timeline that comes after that, you're looking at spring and summer is when you would be looking at applying for things like financial loans, provincial student loans, and then band funding. The 1st of May is a deadline I'll mention again later, but is also the first year housing guarantee deadline. So that's also something to keep in mind and mark down in your calendar. And then in the fall, hopefully you can see my mouse here, my cursor. That is when you can also apply for something called UBC bursaries. So the timeline for these is a bit later. It would be once you're already at UBC, but it's just good to know that there is a type of funding called bursaries that you can apply for once you're at UBC. And it's essentially meant to help students bridge the gap between what their student loan is allowing them to pay for their studies at UBC and what's left in terms of essential costs that are required for the student to study at UBC. and UBC tries to fill the gap as much as they can for students. So that's something you can also explore as well. And admissions. So we are going to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty here, just to make sure that you've got a bit of a summary. But before I get into any of this, I do want to make sure everyone is aware that because this is going to be fairly brief, we do also offer something called a virtual application workshop. So this happens weekly, and it's going to be continuing to happen weekly until the end of November. I am in most of these application workshops, so you will see me again if you decide to attend. But essentially, it's a 90-minute deep dive into the application process. We spend a lot of time on the personal profile, which is a piece I'll talk about in a moment. We look at different writing samples, but really the intent is to give you a bit of a deep dive into the whole process and hopefully equip you with a lot of detailed information as to how to best craft your application. So I will provide the link to where you can register for those at the end when we're doing the Q&A, but I just want to make sure I mention that before I jump into all this other information, just so that you know that that's an option for you to explore, and hopefully I'll see you virtually at some of those events. All right, so jumping into the 1, 2, 3 of applying to UBC. The first step is deciding what to study. You're here tonight, you're learning about engineering at UBC, so you're obviously starting this research process, and perhaps the resources that I'm going to share with you are actually things you've already explored. If so, well done. If not, and this is new information, great. This is a section of our website, the you.ubc.ca website. It's at the top left, it's cut off in this screenshot, but at the top left is the programs tab. So you click that, it lands you here. And this is a fantastic search tool that you can use to search by keyword. I know sometimes when I'm chatting with engineering prospective students, they're looking at a lot of different options. They might be looking at engineering, but maybe the Bachelor of Sustainability or the Bachelor of Science as well. And so it's good to know what all your different options are, and you can search for those really easily in this search tool. So you can filter by campus, by degree. You can even type in keywords. So like if you're into science, type in science in the search box here, and it will populate anything that's relevant to that particular academic area. So it's a nice way of shortening down. We offer over 250 different academic options at UBC, which is great. There's lots of choice, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start. So this tool really helps you kind of break down what's actually of interest to you in a really quick and easy to digest way. And then let's say you find something that you want to learn more about, you click into it, and there's these nice summary pages that you can access as well. I'm a person who loves a good visual, good diagram. And so I really like the way that this information is laid out. You can quickly see the campus, the faculty, the degree it's a part of, because remember, you're applying to the degree when you apply to UBC, and the campus. So it helps you narrow that down. And then I also love this diagram here on the right, which shows you the different courses you could expect to take across the 4 years of the program. There's other great information too, and it'll link you to the faculty, gives you a bit of a summary of what this specialization or major or degree is all about. But I highly recommend that you explore this page. Even if you're pretty certain what you want to do spend a little bit of time just exploring all the possibilities at UBC so that you feel like you're making the most informed choice. All right, step 2. What are the requirements? So, pardon me, I'm fighting off the hiccups here. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the you.ubc.ca website. I've mentioned this quite a few times, probably will mention it a bunch of times before I'm finished here. But this is really the landing page for all things for applying to UBC. You're going to go there. There's a section at the top called Apply to UBC. Then you're going to click Admissions Requirements, and then you're going to click Canadian High School Students. Now, if you are an IB student, there is a specific tab for International Baccalaureate students. So instead of clicking Canadian High School Students, select the IB tab and it will give you the HLSL requirements. But Canadian high school students will also take you to the right page, and it's going to look like this. So it is a search menu, like if you're exploring different degree programs at UBC, you can look at toggle back and forth between the two campuses. You can pick different degree programs, and it's super handy because the drop-down tool will actually populate all the different admissions requirements, that's the word I'm looking for each of the degrees that you're looking to explore. So this is just from the Bachelor of Applied Science for each of the two campuses. For the sake of these screenshots, I picked BC, but it's important that you pick your correct province or territory, and it will populate the requirements based on what school system you're a part of. Or the IB program, it's going to populate appropriate IB requirements as well. So you can see that there are required courses for grade 12, grade 11, and then there's an area called the related courses. So these are courses that are they're not actually required for admission, but if you take courses in these areas, they are seen as related to the degree that you're applying to. And so admissions will pay special attention to those courses as well. But the most important thing in terms of your eligibility is to check that you've taken all the courses that are populating in these grade 11 and grade 12 requirements, and also these general requirements listed up here. And then how to apply? Education Planner BC. So UBC uses a centralized application system here in the province of BC. If you're applying to other BC institutions, most likely they're also on this platform. Essentially, you create one account and you can apply to lots of different BC institutions without having to make an application account over and over and over again. So it's a more centralized approach, which is great. But even if you're an out-of-province student, you're still going to use this system to apply. So it doesn't matter whether you live down the street from campus or across the country, everybody is using Education Planner BC to submit their applications. So within the application, you are going to be able to choose a first choice and a second choice. And I know that my screenshots are old, but it does still look like this. So this is exactly what it will look like when you start your application to UBC. You can pick a first choice, and you can see you're going to pick a campus, you're going to pick the term. So this sometimes trips up students that our academic year is referred to as winter sessions. So when you see that it says winter, that is indeed referring to the academic year. It's a little confusing. And then you're going to pick the degree program. So you can see that you get two choices, and many students who are considering applying to UBC do select one campus, like you see here, UBC's Okanagan campus, Bachelor of Applied Science as their first choice, and then they choose the other campus as their second choice to try and kind of hedge their bets and be as competitive as they can possibly be by being considered for possibly both campuses within their application, so that they're going to have the best chance of graduating with a Bachelor of Applied Science from UBC. But you don't have to do that. Like, say you're considering just one campus, or say you're considering a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Applied Science, or whatever combination of degrees you're looking at is absolutely fine. So you can mix and match across the two campuses, and the degree that you're applying to does not have to be the same in your two choices. But one thing that you do need to consider when you're submitting your application is that, generally speaking, so there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, we are going to look at your first choice degree program first, and then only if you're unsuccessful with your your first choice program would we look at your second choice. So again, that's not always true. It depends on the campus, the degree program, all sorts of things, but it's good to just kind of have that mindset so that if you are in a position where the general approach applies, where we only look at your first choice program first, that you're informed and you're ranking your choices appropriately. All right, and once you start the application, you will be asked to fill out some typical biographical information. So that's things like your name, your address, where you go to school. But there will also be a prompt to ask about ancestral information, including whether you are an Indigenous person of Canada. So if you are Indigenous, we do highly recommend that you use this opportunity to let us know on your application, as it will automatically put you in touch with Indigenous advisors, and that means that your application will be evaluated by Indigenous admissions advisors, and you might also be able to be eligible for some specific funding and award opportunities as well. So in terms of what makes up the actual application, you're looking at the academic profile and the personal profile. Those are the two main components of the application, especially for engineering. Those are the two components. And we are going to be looking at your academic profile. So that's your grades that you received in the courses that you saw on those required courses, as well as related courses. And we're also looking at all academic courses that you have taken in grade 11 and grade 12. There is a whole section of our website called What We Look For if you want to know what constitutes an academic course. I'm sure I'll get some questions about that in the Q&A, so we might be revisiting that topic. But that's sort of the general gist of what we're looking at in your academic profile. So when you're filling this information out on the actual application form itself, it will ask you in a different way depending on which province or territory you're applying from. So for example, if you're applying from Manitoba, you're going to self-report, or you're going to list the courses that you're in for grade 11, or you were in for grade 11 and are in for grade 12 within a section that will allow you to type that information in. But if you're applying from BC or Ontario, we actually receive all your transcript information electronically and directly from your province. So for Ontario students, that's the OUAC. For BC students, that's through the student transcript system through the ministry with your BC EID. So there are different systems that we're using depending on exactly where you're applying from. So just follow the prompts as you go through. And it's pretty intuitive once you're actually within the Education Planner BC platform. And then I mentioned this a little bit at the start. We also have the personal profile. So we're looking at the academic profile, of course, their grades and being eligible academically for these degree programs. But we're also looking at your personal profile, because you're more than just grades, right? You're more than a transcript. You're a whole person who's represented in this application. And I always say, like, you don't go around introducing yourself by your GPA, right? Or your IB score. You're not like, hi, I'm 37 or I'm 3.5 or whatever it is. You're a person with a name and all of these unique interests and things that make you who you are. And that's really what we're trying to get to know about you through the personal profile, is who are you outside of this list of courses and grades that we see. So the personal profile is a series of short essay questions. There's a section on our website where the questions are always posted. So if you're attending tonight in grade 9, 10, or 11, just know that you can always revisit that section of our website to get a heads up of what questions are going to be on the personal profile for you that year. Generally, they don't change that much. I've worked here for over 4 years, and there's only ever been one question change, and it was COVID related. So it's pretty safe to assume at least the majority of what you see there today is likely to apply in the future, but it never hurts to check back. There really aren't any right or wrong answers that you can put in with the personal profile. Your responses do not have to be directly related to engineering, for example, if that's what you decide to apply for. They can be if you feel like that's something you're passionate about or interested in or is related to the prompts at hand, but it certainly does not have to be. And I do encourage you to come to one of the application workshops if you want to do a deep dive and see some writing samples and get a better feel for that personal profile experience. So within the personal profile, we encourage you to take your time to reflect. We have a catchphrase about sort of how we recommend that you kind of think about structuring your responses on the personal profile. So we say the what, the so what, and the now what. So the what is the activity or experience that you're actually sharing with us? Give us a little bit of context. The so what was the significance of this activity to you? And then the now what is, what's your takeaway from that? Or what's your reflection of that? Did it change your mind about something? Did it spark an interest with you? Did you grow as a person or develop leadership skills or whatever is appropriate for whatever you choose? But the what, the so what, and the now what is a good way to kind of try and frame your responses for those personal profile prompts. But you should come to an application workshop and then we'll talk about it more. So we put all of that together and then we evaluate your application with a more holistic approach. It is good to know that decisions about your application are competitive and comparative. So we are comparing your application against the rest of the applications for your degree in campus. And then in terms of entrance awards, I touched on the deadlines for these earlier on, but going into a little more detail, I mentioned that the Centennial Scholars Entrance Award is the financial need-based scholarships. We have the Presidential Scholars Awards, which are the merit-based scholarships, but we also have scholarships that are specific for Indigenous students. And then there's one really cool scholarship and awards program that I'm going to highlight here for students who are Black identifying. So it's the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program. And so for Black identifying students, you can apply for a range of renewable scholarships worth up to 80,000, 80, in case I'm cutting out, 80,000 over the course of your degree. And the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program and services fosters a really strong sense of community among Black students on both the Vancouver campus and the Okanagan campuses. And they do things like events, panel discussions, networking opportunities, there's mentoring opportunities, and it's open to students who are award recipients, but also students who are not. So if you are unsuccessful with receiving an award, not to worry, you can still be part of this fantastic program and community. And it's such an intentionally designed program that's really supporting students through their journey at UBC, but also preparing them for life after UBC. So I do encourage students who might be eligible for that to explore. There's a whole section of our website, or feel free to email me and I would be happy to share more information. And just as a little quick snapshot of the types of specific engineering awards that kind of fall within these two categories of merit-based and financial need-based, just a little bit more context. This is not an exhaustive list, so this is just to give you a little bit of a snapshot here. But you heard me touch on a number of these already, but just good to see that there are some specific awards for engineering applicants as well. And that brings us to the end of the formal presentation. So this slide does have the contact details for our recruitment team. I mentioned that one at the start, as well as our Black student recruitment team. The contact email address is there. Our Indigenous student recruitment team contact email address is there as well. So this is one you're more than welcome to take a photo of. We would love to hear from you and be able to assist you. And the Q&A, I can see that we'll have a few minutes for Q&A, but I highly doubt I'm going to get to everybody's questions today, unfortunately. So definitely take a picture of this, email us so that we can ensure that if we don't get to your question today, that you have a chance to still get that information and receive that guidance from us here at UBC. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. Great question. So the first question I can see here is about, do you need to submit all of the required documents such as English language requirement proof, your transcript, etc., before the December 1st for early admission? So generally speaking, there are a couple of deadlines that you'll be able to keep in mind. So like for English language admission standard proof, that's typically required by the 15th of February. So that would have a longer time. But depending on which school system you're applying from, there may or may not be, a requirement that's around that December 1st deadline. But I'm going to backtrack and give a little more context to try and answer the question at the same time. So when you apply online, you're just applying with the information that's asked of you in the application. So unless you're applying from a province or territory where you have to self-report your courses, which does apply for the prairies and a couple other territories as well. You may need to dig out your report card, your old report card, to type in those courses and grades, and we're going to follow up with you after you've applied online. But for everybody else, you're just going to type in the name of your school, where you go to school, and then basically you pay for the application to be submitted, you hit go, and a couple weeks, usually within about 2 weeks of applying online, admissions actually emails you and updates your applicant portal with the information of which documentation they need from you. So for example, if you're a BC student, that's where we would make that request to say, hey, we're going to need permission to access your transcripts in the student transcript system. Or if you're an IB student, we would say, hey, we're going to reach out to your IB coordinator and request your predicted grades, or whatever school system you're applying from. So we reach out to you after you apply online. So you don't really have to have much prepared in advance unless you're self-reporting some of those courses you took in grade 11 and grade 12, in which case we're going to follow up and request a transcript later. So you don't need the official documents at the time of first submission. So you can just type it in, send it off, and then admissions will tell you what they need and when they need it by and how you can submit it, since it differs a lot depending on the applicant situation. All right, let me see here. How do you apply for a minor? So the minor process typically takes place a bit later in your studies. We also have things called options as well. So generally, that process will take place within your the end of your second year, even your third year, depending on exactly which specialization you're in and kind of where you're at in your decision-making process. But you'll work with an advisor within your faculty and be able to discuss with them, even if in your first year, it's something you're thinking about doing. It's great to get that on their radar, get their advice in case there is anything that you should be considering as you navigate your first or perhaps even the second year. But generally, the application process for minors, whether that's the Bachelor of Applied Science or other degrees you might be considering applying for, generally that process happens later in your studies. So you've got some time to take some courses and get a feel for things, and perhaps take a couple courses in the area you're interested in maybe doing a minor in, and see if that's going to be a good fit before you actually have to make the commitment. Do both campuses share the same campus resources and opportunities? So the two campuses do share a co-op program, which is fantastic. The co-op program for engineering students tends to be quite popular. So you'll have a shared platform there that you would access whether you're on the Vancouver campus or the Okanagan campus. And there are quite a few, like the two faculties do work quite collaboratively together on some things, but they are distinctly different in that they are based at the two different campuses. The structure of the degrees in terms of the overall degree requirements, courses that are required, is slightly different depending on the campus that you're looking at. Again, the specializations options are different. So there are some key differences, but there are opportunities to collaborate as well. And like both campuses will have their own like undergraduate student society for engineering, so that the community feels very connected on the ground where each community is. But you'll notice that some of like things like design teams exist at both campuses. They might not be exactly the same. They aren't exactly the same, but design teams are offered at both. Different research opportunities are offered at both campuses. And it is a Bachelor of Applied Science from UBC, regardless of which campus you choose. So definitely take a bit of time within this event, or reach out to me after today if there's anything specific you want to know about in terms of what it looks like or what the options are across both campuses for anything in particular. But that's sort of the general gist there. All right. Let's see. So does UBC give a grade boost to Alberta students? So it's inconsistent in terms of the way people are understanding the Alberta boost situation. So historically, there was an Alberta boost with a 4%. A long time ago, it was tied to a 4% boost. At the moment, there is a recognition of the Alberta curriculum and taking into consideration how your grades are reflected within the context of that curriculum. So recognizing the rigor of it. But we don't necessarily tie it to a specific boost. It's about our admissions team accurately interpreting the grades for your province, but also interpreting the grades for all of the provinces correctly and accurately within the context of that curricula. So there is certainly recognition of the boost, but tying it to a 4% boost is not necessarily correct anymore, but there is certainly recognition of that rigor. Let's see here. What are the best things to put in your application, such as robotics, sports, volunteering, other? That's an excellent question. And in fact, only you can answer that. So there's nothing in particular that, like, I read personal profiles every year, and there's nothing in particular that we're looking for. So I'm not sitting there with a checklist saying, oh, this is an engineering applicant and I need to see robotics interests, or I need to see an athletic commitment, or X number of volunteering hours, or anything like that. It's more about picking things that have actually been interesting or significant to you. And maybe that is robotics, and maybe that is sports. But pick the things that actually are of genuine interest to you. Don't worry about what you think we want to hear, because truly there's nothing in particular we're expecting. So pick the things that you think are going to allow you to be reflective. And if that's sort of a general response, come to an application workshop, and it will make more sense when we're looking at examples and we're kind of breaking that down a bit more. And I can see there's so many questions, but we have run out of time, and there are lots of exciting things happening at this event tonight. So Franco, I'm guessing you're here to tell me that my time is up. Yep.
Exactly. But yeah, great questions, everyone. But of course, we won't have a chance to get to everyone. So if you had a chance to capture Lauren's email, please feel free to send your question to her, and we'll make sure you get taken care of over there. So thanks, Lauren, for joining us here and answering the many questions from our audience today. And also, don't forget, the conversation, of course, doesn't end here. If you haven't heard, both campuses will be hosting in-person open house events on Saturday, November 2nd. So if you're able to visit us, that's a great way to determine if maybe the Okanagan campus or the Vancouver campus is a better fit for you. Definitely come by. Registration, of course, is already posted and open. We have already received a lot of registrations, so don't wait. Sign up and save your spot. Thank you again to everyone. We hope that we can see you on campus very, very soon. But for now, we'll see you at the expo. We'll see you soon.